Hi everybody, happy Blockheads Wednesday. We are at block 10, so week 10. We are a third of the way through the second group of blockheads at this point. There will be 30 blocks total. So now we've got the first 10. And our featured designer today is Alexia Abegg of Ruby Star Society. So this is the first year that the Ruby Star Society designers have joined us for blockheads, and we are thrilled to have them. And Alexia's block today is the 16 patch star. So I hope you're ready to bust out your scraps. This is such a great scrap busting block, and I think there's so many ways you can play around with this center 16 patch. I'm super excited to walk you through today's block. This is my finished version, and I am in love. I just think I need to make a whole quilt out of this. So let's dive into our pattern, and I've got some fun tools to share with you guys today, and we'll get started sewing. Okay, today we're going to be making some half square triangles, and then we're going to be piecing lots of little squares together. So I kind of had an unfair advantage because I knew this block was coming. So I've been saving all these little pieces from cutting all of my previous blocks, and it made it really easy to grab 16 different prints for my patchwork center and cut those down. But you know, if you wanted to do like a pattern in here, or you don't have to make it scrappy, it's totally up to you what you want to do with this center unit. Our pattern instructions this week do have us making half square triangles for these BC units, but I know some folks prefer to do flying geese in this situation. So I will give the cutting instructions for the stitch and flip method of flying geese on the blog post this week. So if you'd rather do that as opposed to making half square triangles, you can find those cutting instructions on the blog. But in this video, I will be making half square triangles. I'll be making the 6-inch finished block, so these are the measurements I'm going to be using this week, and I'll probably refer to these measurements in this video. Our first step is to make our BC half square triangles, and this is the same method that we always use. It's the 2 at a time method that has you mark a line from corner to corner on the back of your lighter fabric square. I do my half square triangles just a little bit differently. I go ahead and cut them on the diagonal first, and then I match them up. I'll be pressing towards the darker fabric, so I'm going to put my darker fabric on top. And then I'll stitch a scant 1/4 inch seam along this line. It just goes so much faster for me when I cut my squares in half to begin with. Not everyone's crazy about sewing on that bias edge, but I heavily starch my fabrics and I don't usually have any issues at all. Also, I always give you slightly oversized cutting instructions so that you can trim down, and that kind of helps when working with a bias edge as well. So these half square triangles are going to come out a little bit oversized, and we'll trim them down. So let me go ahead and stitch up my half square triangles and get those trimmed up. Okay, my half square triangles are pressed and ready to trim. So when I'm working with blocks that are units that are about 2.5 inches or smaller, I like to use a larger ruler for trimming them down. You can find rulers that are 2.5 inches, but that doesn't give me a lot of places to put my fingers, and so I like having a little bit larger ruler to work with. So in order to make it faster to find my spot, I'm using this OmniGrid glow line tape on my ruler. Now 2 inches, that's what I'm trimming these down to for the 6-inch block. 2 inches I know isn't so hard to find on the ruler, but at the same time, every little bit helps, and just having that little stripe of color there to help me spot where I need to line up makes it so much faster. So does using a rotating cutting mat. So that's going to make trimming my half square triangles really fast. So let's talk about lining up our half square triangles and trimming them down. Okay, here you can see how much I'll have to trim away on my half square triangles. So like I mentioned earlier, the cutting instructions in the pattern do give you slightly oversized half square triangles so that you can trim them down and make them Absolutely perfect. I like to do oversize and trim down. So I'm just lining up this diagonal line on my ruler on the seam of my half square triangle. You can see I've got my 2 inches marked here with the tape, so it makes it easy to spot. And I'm just going to trim and then rotate and trim the other sides. And there we go. I have a perfectly trimmed half square triangle. So let's finish trimming the rest of these and we can move on to the next step. Okay, my half square triangles are trimmed and ready to set aside while I move on to the next step. The next step is to make a 4 patch for our center unit, our center patchwork here. And I have you do 4 patches, and then we make these little units of 4 and put them together this way, as opposed to making a 16 patch and then sewing the side half square triangles and then do rows like that. I do that because I like sewing units together as opposed to longer row seams. But if you wanted to do flying geese for your BC units, of course, that wouldn't quite work. I still like, for me anyway, I like putting so many little patches together in smaller chunks. So even if I was doing flying geese here for B and C, I would still probably make my center 16 patch, but out of 4 patches. So that's what I'm going to do here. And so I've got all my little squares. I've got 16 squares here. So I'm going to lay them out and decide how I want them to look in my center patchwork unit. A good way to make sure that you've distributed your color values evenly across your little patchwork block is to take a picture of your arrangement and use your black and white filter to take a look at the color values. So you can kind of see how that would work because your diagram here is black and white. So being able to see the values with the colors removed helps you make sure that you are distributing your color values evenly across your patchwork block. Okay, I've got my squares in the arrangement that I want to have them sewn together. So I'm going to sew them in groups of 4. So this will be 1 4 patch. This will be another one. This will be my 3rd 4 patch, and this will be my 4th 4 patch. So I've got a lot of little seams here, and I'm going to show you something that will help you get nice flat seams when you're working with tiny little seams and lots of seams like we are here. I'm going to be using the Acorn Easy Press pen for getting really flat seams as I sew my 4 patches together. So you fill the pen with Easy Press fabric treatment, and then you take this pen, and it's got like a soft nib here, and you just apply this to your seam and then use your iron on a dry setting, and that's going to help you get really flat seams. So let me sew my 4 patches together, or start sewing them together, and I'll show you how it works. Okay, here are the pieces of my first 4 patch. I chain pieced them together in my groups of 4 so that I would remember what goes with what. And I'm going to flip this one this way because I want to press this bottom one in this direction to the left. I want to press that way. And I want to press the top one. I want to press the one on top to the right. And then that way, when I sew these together, my seams are going to nest. So first I want to use my Easy Press pen. And you can just kind of press and make sure that the liquid is flowing through it, and it is. So now I'm going to just run this along my seam, kind of get it saturated there. And now I'll open these up. And press with my hot dry iron. Oops. Give that one more little press. Oh, wow. Okay, my seams are so flat. That's amazing. So now I'm going to nest the seams and sew these together. So this easy press pen, it's sort of hard to see, but it really did make a nice flat seam. Wow, that's really impressive. Okay, so that's awesome. And now I will sew this with my scant 1/4 inch seam, and I will press this seam open. So one more time, here's another one of my 4 patches, and I'm going to turn the bottom one this way. So now I'll use the easy press pen, and I'm just going to saturate that seam. Doesn't take too much. The easy press solution comes through that nib really well, and you can buy replacement nibs. And now I'm going to open this one this way, open the top one the other direction so that my seams are going to nest. And I'm going to press with my hot dry iron. And now I have super flat seams. Okay, let me finish pressing these open and then sewing my 4 patches together. Okay, I have my 4 patches finished and pressed open. I like to press my seams open here. And I used the easy press pen on these as well, on this seam, and it's really nice and flat. It's a great product there to help you get super flat seams. So now I'm ready to set these aside and start working on the next part, which is to make my 4 patch, my corner unit. And so I'm going to do that with 2 half square triangles and an A square. So I'll join these together, and I'll do this 4 times with each of my 4 patches here, just like in the diagram. When I press these, I'm going to press, let's see, I think I will press towards the half square triangles. It'd probably make sense to press towards the A square here, but since I got the seams, I think I'll press towards the half square triangles because I also want these star points to kind of pop a little bit. So I'm going to press towards my half square triangles, and then when I join the rows together, I'm going to press that seam open just like I did on my little 4 patch units. Okay, my unit is pieced together and I've got the rows pressed open, and now I'm ready to assemble the whole block. Okay, I've started joining my units together and I just have one more seam to go. Now I'm going to press these, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going to press my seam open or to the side, but I do know one thing. I'm going to use my easy press pen on the seams regardless of which way I press them, because take a look at this. So here is my little 4 patch unit, and I used the easy press pen on these seams, and you can see how nice and flat they are. And then when I was sewing my these units together, I did not use the easy press pen and I just used steam, and you can see the seam is just not quite as flat. So since I have a lot of seams here and I have some bulk, I am definitely going to use this easy press pen. I'm just not sure if I'm going to press to the side or if I'm going to press open. I think I'm going to press to the side. Okay, here it is, my finished block, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. I did end up pressing this seam open. I pressed to the side for the corner unit, so I pressed this one this way and the bottom one this direction, and that way I was able to kind of nest my seams. But then when I pressed the two rows together, I did press that row seam open. I highly recommend the Easy Press pen for getting flat seams. We've got a lot of seams together, especially in the 6-inch block. A lot of seams right there together, and using the Easy Press pen definitely helped me get a flatter seam than I typically achieve just with steam. I also got my Americana block done. You guys, I am obsessed with this block. I think this would make such a great quilt all by itself. Just a bunch of these blocks, and it's a great scrap buster, or maybe even a leaders and enders project. I have been wanting to try a leaders and enders project for a while, and I think this would be a great one, especially if I wanted to, use these smaller squares, which I really like personally. So thank you, Alexia. We're so glad that you and the Ruby Star designers are part of Blockheads this year. And Alexia, you've given us such a great block today. So thank you so much for that. I can't wait to see everyone's version of the 16 patch star. So please don't forget to post on our Facebook group and post on Instagram using the hashtag ModaBlockheads5. Thanks so much for watching this week's video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and can't wait to see you next week.